right, so welcome everybody. I'm going to put the view, if you know the little square up in the top, it says view, and you have different categories. If you put speaker view, then my screen should be biggest so that you see what's going on with me. All right, so I have the chat box right in the middle of my screen, and I want the chat box over on the right-hand side. Okay, I just found the click that puts it over on the right-hand side. So that's awesome. All right, so now that I have the chat on the right-hand side, welcome all to the cooking class this evening. I want to thank the South Lyon Township Library for hosting me. I'm going to teach you today about the whole grain millet and also how to make a vegetable stew. And we're going to put the two of them together. So during the cooking class, even though it's virtual and you're watching, at home and I'm here at my house, I like the class to be interactive. So we're going to use the chat, and you can ask me any questions whatsoever. And a couple times through the cooking class, I'm going to ask you a question for you to answer in the chat what's going on with you. And then usually there's a time where I can say, okay, this is a good time for questions. If anybody feels comfortable, they can unmute themselves and they can actually talk and ask me a question. I'm okay with that also. All right. So I'm going to start the cooking class with an actual question and ask you, what was the reason why you decided to attend the class? Do you want to start eating more healthy? Do you want to learn about millet? Are you interested in vegan recipes? Or I don't know, maybe you just want to have more energy in your life. So you're thinking you want to eat healthy food. So that's the first question. You can go ahead and put your answer in chat. So to introduce myself, I am Chef Val. I have been teaching healthy whole foods cooking classes for 25 years. I'm celebrating my 25th anniversary this year. Yay! How do I move the chat box from the middle of the screen? Okay, great question. So many people love whole grains, want to cook with more whole grains. I love to make soup, would love to learn about millet. So the way that I move the chat box from the middle is I went up to the top where the little thing says view, and I dropped it down to where there was a drop down menu, and I clicked the word full screen. And when I clicked full screen, the chat box went over to the right-hand side for the person who asked, how do you get the chat box to the right-hand side? I have taken many of your classes and have loved all of your other millet recipes. Hi, Betsy. Glad you made it. Many people want to learn about millet and the whole grain. That's so awesome. All right, so I also am the author of 5 cookbooks, and this is my website, macrobiotic.com. All right, so let's get started with the whole grain millet, since that's what everybody's interested in. This is what the whole grain millet looks like before it's cooked. All right, so it's little yellow round seeds. Many people have seen it in bird feed. And so that's where most people have seen it. So many people want to learn about millet, and many people are vegan. I had cancer and wanted to eat better, and I'm trying to lose weight. That's fantastic, because many of the ingredients I cook with have anti-cancer properties. And if you start eating a healthy whole foods diet and you get rid of the refined processed stuff, the weight's just going to fall off of you. That's just what happens. So anyways, how are we going to buy millet? So you can go to a health food store. Many health food stores sell millet packaged in the bag. Some of them have them in the bulk section, or you can go online and you can buy bags of millet. So that's what you're going to look for. You're going to look for the whole grain millet, not millet flour. Millet flour is when they grind it up and they make flour, obviously. So you want the whole grain millet. And so is millet high in carbs? Yes, that's the next topic I'm going to say. So I'm going to put the millet in a pot in the water, and I'm going to start cooking it. And then I'm going to talk about the health benefits of millet. So I'm going to move the camera over to the stove so we can start cooking the millet. All right, so now we're over at the stove. Get yourself a nice pot. Usually a stainless steel pot works very well to cook the millet. And so we're starting with 1/2 cup of millet. So there's 1 cup of water in there. You take the whole grain millet, 1/2 cup, and you double it to see how much water you need. You need 1 cup. All right, so let's turn the heat on. I'm adding the 1 cup of millet, or I'm sorry, 1/2 cup of millet to the 1 cup of water. I have the heat on high because I want to bring this to a boil. When you bring it to a boil, it starts opening up the kernels of the millet and starts the cooking process. So you just want to bring it to a boil. And then once it gets to a boil, I'll show you what we're going to do. So millet. Millet is a whole grain, which is a complex carbohydrate. Complex carbohydrates give your body energy because they digest very slowly in your system. When you digest whole grains, which are very high in fiber, they release glucose very slowly into your system. This gives you long, sustainable energy to last throughout the day. And that's why whole grains give you energy. So are they high in carbs? Well, they're high in complex carbs, which are completely different than simple carbs. Simple carbohydrates would be white rice, white flour, white sugar, refined processed things. When you eat simple carbs, the glucose gets released very quickly in the system and it spikes your blood sugar level. And then you come down and you crash. So your blood sugar, when you eat simple carbs, goes up, down, up, down, up, down. When you eat complex carbs, whole grains, your blood sugar level goes like this, even keel, stabilizes your blood sugar. So millet is a whole grain. It is a complex carbohydrate. All right, it's boiling. So see, it only took, a couple minutes to boil. We're just opening up the kernel. Now, what you want to do, get your other burner on a low temperature. So this is high, that's low. Now you're gonna put this in the low temperature right here. All right, we can get rid of that hot temperature. Now, it's gonna cook for approximately 20 minutes. It's gonna simmer. I use this. This is a flame tamer or a flame diffuser. This is metal. This is wooden. You can find these probably online. Flame diffuser or flame tamer. Now, the reason why I use this is because it evenly disperses the heat from the fire to the pot of whatever you're cooking. So this way, I don't accidentally burn the whole grain that I'm cooking. So see, I put it in between the heat and the pot. And it cooks for 20 minutes. So let me set the timer. Now, do you need one of those heat diffusers to start cooking and eating whole grains? No, you don't. You can start cooking whole grains in pots on your stove. I'm just saying it's a tool that I use on a regular basis all the time because I cook whole grains all the time. All right. Now, some other health benefits about about millet, because I said iron. Millet is your whole grain that is very high in iron. So it's known for being really high in iron. Contains many B vitamins. B vitamins are important because your body gets stressed out. When your body gets stressed out, your body gets depleted of B vitamins. So you need to eat foods that have B vitamins. That would be millet. Millet also is very high in calcium. Contains phosphorus. Millet feeds and nurtures your middle organs, which are your spleen, pancreas, and stomach. These middle organs are the organs that help you deal with stress. So when you get stressed out, your middle organs get uptight. But when you eat millet, it feeds and nurtures your spleen, pancreas, and stomach, then those organs kind of relax and they function properly. And then you don't get that tightness inside of you. So we can consider millet our anti-stress grain because it feeds and nurtures those organs and because it has the B vitamins in it. Millet is 100% gluten-free, and it is the easiest whole grain to digest. So when I counsel people, I also do lifestyle counseling where I help people with health issues, and I use food. If anybody has a digestive issue, I usually start with the whole grain millet because it's the easiest grain to digest. Once it gets cooked up, it's creamy and it has a natural sweet flavor too, which many people really like. All right, so that is the millet part of the recipe. Now we need to chop some vegetables to make the stew part of the recipe. I am going to move the camera back to the cutting board. Okay, so the stew is going to start with onion. Usually just about all my recipes start with onion because I love them so much. When onions are raw, they're pungent, but then once they're cooked, they become beautifully sweet. And so you want your vegetable stew to be sweet. Everybody likes that beautiful sweet flavor. I chose a beautiful purple onion because it gave the stew a little more color. You could use yellow onion, you could use white onion. I just chose the purple one for color. So here is your lesson on chopping vegetables. So you have your wooden cutting board. Take some water, put water on the cutting board. That water on the cutting board fills in the pores of the wood, so your cutting board does not absorb the color or the odor of the vegetable you're chopping. So my cutting board never turns orange from sweet potatoes. It never smells like onions or garlic because I always remember to have a wet cutting surface. All right. Now I soaked the onion in cold water. Does anybody know why I did that? You can type it in the chat if you know why I soaked it in cold water. Onions have anti-inflammatory properties. So they help fight inflammation in your system. Inflammation can be like joint pains, arthritis, muscle pains, things like that. When you have pain, that's inflammation. No tears, so you don't cry. Yes. So you soak the onion in cold water so that when you chop it, you don't cry. You also soak in cold water so that the skin comes off of it. Just like I demonstrated, the skin comes off very easily. Now it's time to chop the onion. We're going to dice it. So you see how the onion's wobbly? So we don't want to chop the onion when it's wobbly. We want a flat surface. So we put it so it's flat down like that. And then to get a diced onion, I'm going to chop with the lines straight up and down. And I'm holding the onion together, and you'll see why in a minute. So I've chopped the onion. Now I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to chop like so. And sometimes I flip the onion down after I get to a certain point where it's just an easier grip, and you get diced onion like so. We do the other one. We're starting with one purple onion diced. So again, just chopping it. Let's see. Onions also are 90% water, so they're diuretic in nature. So the beautiful liquid, the beautiful water from the onions, when we start cooking the stew, it's going to come out of the onions, and it's sweet. So it helps make the stew have that beautiful sweet flavor. Also contains vitamin A, vitamin C, and there are numerous anti-cancer properties in onions also. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, according to the recipe, is start sauteing the onion. I'm not going to move the camera back over to the stove. I'm just going to demonstrate it here. So get yourself a nice pot. You want one that has depth in it because you're going to be creating the stew all in one pot. I soak onions to take out some of the harshness. It softens the flavor. Okay, so Cheryl takes out some of the harsh, some of that pungent of the onion. So we're going to saute the onions in olive oil and sea salt. Now your recipe just says a little bit of olive oil. I would say I just do a zhuzh like that, just around in a circle. I would say that's a teaspoon. That's all there is. You don't need any more than that. You put the onions in there like so. And you put a pinch of sea salt, right? Whenever you saute vegetables, you have to put a little bit of salt in there. The salt brings out the flavor of the food and actually makes your dish more flavorful, okay? Now, I'm just going to move the onions around so they're in the pan on the bottom. Now I'm going to put it on the stove on a medium heat, and it's going to slowly heat up, and then the onions are going to start to sizzle, and we'll hear that sizzle, and you're going to cook the onions until they start to become see-through and soft. Now, when they get to that point, I will show you in the camera what they look like, all right? Now, when you saute the onions or when you saute any vegetable, you don't want to sit there right next to the pan and constantly stir, constantly stir, constantly stir. You put the vegetables into the pan and they're hitting the hot surface of the pan, and you want them to sit in that hot surface so the onions start to brown. If you constantly move the vegetables, if you're standing by the stove just doing this, the onions never get the chance to cook because they don't hit that hot surface. Could you recommend a chopping knife for vegetables? Okay, so this is a knife I've had for as long as I've been cooking, 25 years. Maybe not this particular knife, but these are the knives that I've used for 25 years. They're called Caddy, C-A-D-D-I-E. They are a Japanese vegetable knife. I have not bought them in probably, I don't know, 8 years. I have, I think, like 10 of them myself, because when I teach cooking classes and I would have the classes in my home, everybody would help chop vegetables. So I haven't bought them in many years. So you're going to have to do a Google search, C-A-D-D-I-E, Caddy knife from Japan, and hopefully you can find it. They keep their sharpness for a long time. I do sharpen my knives periodically, but I use my knives a lot. And still, I've had these things for, some of them I've had for 25 years because I've had them as long as I've been teaching. And then some of them I've had as long as 10 years. They're still sharp and they still work fantastic. I like this knife too because my hand is relatively small and the handle fits in it very small. The blade is lightweight and it works really well. If you get one of those ones that are really big and it tends to get heavy, it tends to get a little harder for you to chop the vegetables. So this is a lightweight knife. $32 online. Thank you, Lori. Yeah, $32 and it's going to last forever. That's fantastic. All right, so we're going to chop some more vegetables. Let's go with a vegetable that maybe you have not had before, or maybe you have. This is a parsnip. So you can put in the chat, you can comment who's had a parsnip before, and if you've had a parsnip, what do you think of the parsnip? All right, so your recipe calls for 2 cups of parsnip. So we got to get our measuring cup out. We also need to clean the cutting board because we just got done chopping the onion. We're going to start fresh with some water on the cutting board. I have had them. They seem mild in taste, very tasty. I love them roasted. Somebody else loves them. Good. I'm glad people have had the parsnips. So whenever you get vegetables from the grocery store, you cut off the 2 butt ends. You get rid of those. All right. I'm going to show you how to chop this parsnip in what's called a pencil cut. Ooh, somebody grows them. That's awesome. Parsnips and stews. Yes, put it in a stew. So once you learn this pencil cut, it's the easiest way to chop vegetables that have the shape of a carrot. It's easy. It's convenient and it looks pretty in the soup or stew. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your knife and you're going to be almost parallel with the vegetable, but give yourself a little bit of angle. You're going to chop. You're going to turn a quarter of I don't know, quarter of the vegetable, chop again, like a quarter, chop again, chop again. So what you're going to do is you're going to do this. I'll make sure the camera can see what I'm doing. So you chop, right? And then you turn and you chop again, and then you turn and then you chop again. Now, you want to try and get the pieces relatively the same size because you're going to be put these in a stew and all of the pieces are going to cook for the same amount of time. So you want all the pieces to cook evenly, right? Now, the reason why it's called pencil cut is because it looks like a sharpened pencil. So now let's look at these pieces here. So we've got relatively the same size pieces, but this first piece that we did, that one's too big. So I'm going to cut that in half, but all the rest of them are relatively the same size. So again, we cut it, quarter turn, cut it, quarter turn. Now I said, once you get the hang of this and you practice this and you do this a bunch, this is a relatively easy way to chop. Now, once you get down to the little part, see, big, thick part, little part, you're going to have to adjust how you cut the parsnip. Because again, you want the pieces to be relatively the same size. So whereas in the beginning, my pieces were kind of flat, now they're kind of thicker. Yet if you look at the two of them, they are relatively the same size. Again, that's important when all the vegetables are cooking in a pot all at the same time. We want 2 cups. Let me see, that looks like it's, yeah, my God, one parsnip gave us 2 cups. So 1 parsnip gave us 2 cups. I am going to continue chopping the vegetables right now because I want to get the vegetables in the pot so they can cook. Now I have the nutritional information of the parsnips, the carrots, and the turnip, but I'm going to give you the nutritional information when the vegetables are in the stew and they're cooking. So that way we can keep chopping vegetables, okay? So we get the carrots. Now, carrots is the vegetable that I usually do this pencil cut on the most because they're beautiful, they're long, they're thin. So again, chop off the edge, the 2 ends, chopping at an angle, and you chop it in chunks. Now you want the carrot to be relatively the same size as the parsnip, all going into the same stew. Has the recipe been sent out yet? If so, I didn't receive it. That's from Jan. So Meg at the South Lyon Library can check into that. All right, so we're cutting these at a pencil. Carrots are going to add this beautiful orange color to your dish. Remember, you eat with your eyes first, so you need your stew to be colorful, right? So 1 carrot did not give us quite 2 inches. Okay, so Meg's working on the recipes. So we'll just give her some time. All right. Carrots also have a natural sweetness to them. And we want our stew to be sweet. All right, so 2 carrots gave me 2 cups. Get a clean cutting board, clean knife. All right, let me show you what's going on with the onions. Now, I have not stirred the onions yet. This is the first time. I can see they're sizzling and they're starting to cook. So I'm just going to turn the onions a little bit, put them back on the heat. They're going to continue cooking. Right, so the next vegetable is turnip. Now, when you get the recipe, your recipe is going to tell you to use 1 turnip, but we want approximately 2 cups. Does the South Lyon Township Library have parsnip seeds in its seed saving library? Good question. So we'll find out. So it depends on what size your turnip is. If you get a relatively larger turnip, you'll probably have enough for 2 cups. If you get a smaller turnip, you might have to do more than just 1 turnip. So, all right. So let's look at the turnip. If you've never bought turnip before, this is the vegetable that's purple on the top and white on the bottom, okay? Turnips are in the cabbage family. If you ever get the opportunity to get some turnips that still have the greens on them, you'll see the greens look like big cabbage leaves and they kind of smell like cabbage too. So with the turnip, we can't cut the turnip in pencil cut because it's not a long, thin vegetable. So we're going to cut the turnip in chunks, right? So you cut it in half and then flat side down with the turnip. And then we cut it in chunks like so. Put it in pieces. They kind of come out like triangle shape. So that's what we want. 2 cups. Now the turnip is not as sweet as the carrot and the parsnip. So it's going to give us a little different flavor. If you get organic turnips, once they cook, they should definitely be sweet to the taste, but they're not going to be as sweet as the other vegetables. The other vegetables just have a sweeter taste to it. So look at that. 1 turnip gave us 2 cups. So now we have 2 cups of that. All right. So that is the vegetables. We have carrot, turnip, and parsnip. All right, well, that's the timer for the millet. So good time to move the camera over to the stove. You can check the millet and we can start the stew part of the dish. Meg says, I have sent out the recipe. If you did not receive it, you can direct message me your email in the chat and I will get it to you. Thank you, Meg. Okay, so we're going to move the camera to the stove. Okay, so the timer went off for the millet. And so let's check and see if the millet's done. So how do we do that? We look at the millet and we move the millet aside. Now there's still water underneath that millet. And I can see some of those little round millet grains are still hard. You want all those little round millet seeds, which is the grain, they kind of pop and they become soft and creamy. And all the water has been absorbed underneath the millet. So even though I set the timer for 20 minutes, that's how you check to see if your millet is done. So it needs to go for a couple more minutes. I remember teaching a cooking class many years ago, and someone said they didn't like millet because it was crunchy. And I had to say, well, if your millet is crunchy, then you haven't cooked it long enough. Millet should be nice and soft and creamy. If it's crunchy, that means that the little kernels didn't break down. Okay, so many people have received the recipe. Awesome, fantastic. All right, so let's look at the onions. Here's the onions. Now you can start to see they're see-through. They're starting to get soft, right? So this is when we add the vegetables. So we add the carrots. We add the parsnips. Oh, we have cabbage to chop too. Well, we'll get to the cabbage after we get this in here. and the turnip. All right. So in your recipe, I try and describe this, but you want each vegetable to be in its own compartment. So the carrots are here, the parsnips are here, the turnips are there. It's kind of like pieces of pie. Now, the reason why you do that is so that all the carrots are together. So like all the carrot juices cook, all the parsnip juices cook. It's like a gourmet way of cooking. So your carrots taste more like carrots, your parsnips taste more like parsnip. It's if you put all the vegetables together. Okay, so now we need to put the seasoning on it. We have 3/4 of a cup of water. We have 2 tablespoons of tamari. Tamari is salty condiment made from fermented organic soybeans. So we put the tamari into the water. I have 1 tablespoon of this umeboshi vinegar. This is a salty, pungent, sour vinegar. That goes in there too. The umeboshi vinegar may be the one that you're not familiar with. You get it from health food stores. I use it in seasoning in my cooking because of the tremendous flavor. Now, the other thing we need is a little bit of sweetness. So we are going to use brown rice syrup. It says rice nectar, but this is brown rice syrup. I get Suzanne's because it's top of the line, best brown rice syrup. You might be able to find Lundberg brown rice syrup, another good brown rice syrup you could use. All right, so I forgot to open this before class, so give me a second while I get this. This is a brand new jar. Get the lid off. Ah, there we go. All right, yeah, just getting the lids off a little hard. So we want 2 tablespoons of the brown rice syrup. Brown rice syrup is sticky, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 2 tablespoons. 1, 2 tablespoons. And then I'm going to put the tablespoon right into the liquid and stir it. And the water and the tamari and the ume vinegar is going to dissolve that brown rice syrup. See how the brown rice syrup is sticky? Okay. I want to get this into the pot because it needs to start cooking. The vegetables need to start cooking. You need a lid. All right. Just make sure I get all that in there. All right. Now we pour this over the vegetables like so. That brown rice syrup is sticky, so just put it all in there and put a lid on it. You want to cook this for 15 to 20 minutes until all the vegetables are soft. Okay, that's what I was looking for, the rag. I gotta wash my hands. Hold on a minute. Okay, let's check the millet again because it's been going for a couple minutes while I was talking through the stew. Yeah, I think it's done. Yep, the millet's done. Okay, so again, what I did was I just moved some of the millet aside. All the water is absorbed and all the little kernels have popped apart and they're all soft. Now, when I cook my whole grains, after I check to make sure they're done, I like to let the grains just sit for 5 minutes before I do anything with them because the pot is still hot. There's still a little bit of residual heat going on in there. Okay, so you just let the millet hang out there. Actually, we're going to let the millet hang out until the vegetable stew is ready. Okay, so we have a little bit of time here while everything cooks. And this is when I want to give you the nutritional information of parsnips and turnips. And we have a couple questions here. Where do you get the ume vinegar? You get it from a health food store. Call Greener Pastures in South Lyon and ask if they have it. If not, Whole Foods will. Yeah, if you're talking about the ume vinegar. Can we replace the vinegar and brown rice syrup with apple cider vinegar and honey? Okay, these are all great questions. So you could replace the ume vinegar with apple cider vinegar. That's not a problem. But the ume vinegar is salty and your apple cider vinegar is not salty. So you might have a slightly different flavor. If you really wanted to replace the ume vinegar because you didn't have it, I would just add 1 more tablespoon of tamari. I would have 3 tablespoons of tamari and no ume vinegar because the flavor of the ume is salty. Can you use honey? You could use honey. I do not cook with honey because honey is intensely sweet and it's sucrose. And also being vegan, vegan people don't use honey. So let me tell you about the health benefits of what I was using and why I use them. So first of all, the brown rice syrup. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. The reason why I use brown rice syrup is because it's made from whole brown rice, which is your whole grain, your complex carbohydrate. They cook the brown rice down and they create this beautiful, thick, sweet syrup. They don't use any type of chemical extraction process to take anything out. It's just 100% whole brown rice. So the sweetener or the sugar that's in brown rice syrup is maltose, M-A-L-T-O-S-E. Maltose will never spike your blood sugar level. So even people who are diabetic or have blood sugar issues can handle desserts made with brown rice syrup. There's also a barley malt. Okay, both of those come from whole grains. So they will never spike your blood sugar level because they're maltose. Now, honey is healthier than white refined sugar. White refined sugar is a chemical. Nobody should be eating white refined sugar. So that's why I say honey, you could use in replacement of it because it's better than sugar. However, honey is sucrose. Honey will spike your blood sugar level. Yes, it's healthier than white refined sugar. That's fine. I don't use it in my cooking, but if that's all that you have on hand and you want to use that instead of brown rice syrup, yes, you can use it. It's a substitute. Your stew will be sweeter than my stew, but that's perfectly fine. Not a problem. In fact, the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of brown rice syrup. If I was using honey, well, if you were using honey, I would just use one tablespoon of honey because it's going to be really sweet. All right, so this is bubbling now. So you would, see what time it is. Normally put that on a low and let it go for about 15, 20 minutes until the vegetables are fork tender. I have mine a little higher than that because I'm in a cooking class and I'm trying to get the recipe done quick. But if you were at home and you were just cooking this, you wouldn't have to worry about that. All right. So parsnips. Parsnips are high in silicon. Silicon is an insoluble fiber that your body needs in order to digest and utilize calcium. So you have to have silicon in your diet because it complements and works with calcium. You have to have the 2 of them together. Parsnips are an excellent source of silicon. Okay, I have read that you should not cook with honey because heat changes the chemical makeup of it, Betsy. So thank you very much, Betsy. Again, I don't cook with honey, so I don't research honey. So I'm not sure about if you should cook with honey or not cook with honey, but excellent point, Betsy, you know. Yeah, and then Nancy says she adds it at the very end. So brown rice syrup, you don't have to worry about that. You can use brown rice syrup. Now maple syrup. Maple syrup is my second choice if I don't use brown rice syrup. You could make this recipe with maple syrup. Again, I would just use 1 tablespoon, not 2, because it's intensely sweet. Parsnips are also very high in vitamin C, high in calcium, contain vitamin A. Vitamin A is really good for your eyes. Contain iron, folate, phosphorus, potassium for your heart, riboflavin, and vitamin K. All of those things are found in parsnips. What can you subs if you swell up like a blowfish if things are salty? That's from Lori. Okay, so excellent question. The body works in cooperation with everything that's going on. So if your body blows up when you eat a certain thing, it's a chemical reaction, but that basically means that your body has inflammation to begin with. So you need to delve more into what's going on with your body. And I can do that in counseling with you, taking into consideration everything that's going on. If you got the inflammation down in your body and you got rid of it and you started eating healthy whole foods, I think that your body blowing up like a fish would stop happening. But for right now, because that's the condition you're dealing with, make the recipe without any salt in it. I have cooked with people or cooked for people that are on a no salt diet. And so you can make the recipe, just don't put the salt in it if you're having a reaction like that at this point in time. But again, my advice to you would be to look more into why is there so much inflammation in your body that you're having a reaction like that, basically. But yeah, you can make the recipe without the salty condiment. That's perfectly fine. Turnips. So turnips, as I mentioned before, they're in the cabbage family. Now they've done a lot of studying about vegetables that are in the cabbage family. So this would include cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, collard greens, and turnips. They have a lot of anti-cancer properties. It's actually a turnip is a member of the cabbage family. They originated in Northern Asia. They are high in vitamin C, contain potassium, contain phosphorus, contain B vitamins, and also are high in calcium. This is your turnip. Lori says she's the poster child for poor health. That's funny. Make sure to check your blood pressure and heart if swelling up that much. Yeah. So again, these are all health conditions you have to pay attention to. So we have parsnips, we have turnips, and we have the carrots. So carrots, vitamin A. That's why carrots are so good for your eye health. Carrots also contain potassium, contain phosphorus. Carrots help to purify your blood. And they also, all of these root vegetables, these wonderful sweet vegetables like carrots and parsnips, they feed and nurture your spleen, pancreas, and stomach. Remember I mentioned millet feeds and nurtures the spleen, pancreas, and stomach. So do parsnips, turnips, and carrots, root vegetables. So we're focusing on your digestive, spleen, pancreas, and stomach, all the organs that help you deal with stress also. See, my vegetables are getting soft quickly because, again, like I said, you know, in a cooking class, I'm trying to do it a little quicker than if you were doing it at home. So they're cooking, they're getting there. So I'm going to open up the floor for just a few minutes. This is a great time to ask questions. You can unmute yourself if you want to talk. We have maybe 3 or 4 minutes where I could answer questions at the moment. Any questions? Okay, if there's no questions, I'm just going to keep talking because that's what I do. So, millet, are you using organic vegetables? Thank you, Nancy. Yes, always. Thank you for the question. I choose organic all the time. And oh, you know what? We have to put cabbage in the stew. You need to remind me. Cabbage. We got to put cabbage in there. Let me go over here to the cutting board. Always get organic. you know, your organic has no chemicals or pesticides. And that makes a huge difference in your overall health. I don't put in the recipe organic parsnip, organic turnip, organic cabbage, because it would just be redundant to keep putting that word in there. But thank you. Thank you for asking that question. Yes. All right. So I kind of forgot, but we're gonna put it in there now. 1 cup of cabbage. I noticed that you don't peel them either. Better for fiber. Most of your vitamins and minerals are located right underneath the skin. So if you don't have to peel the vegetables, don't peel them, because most of your vitamins and minerals are right underneath the skin. There's no reason to peel parsnips. There's no reason to peel carrots. There's no reason to peel turnip. Not really, no. All right, so I'm just chopping the cabbage into small pieces, and we're gonna throw it in there the last couple minutes of cooking because I forgot to put it in there. So sorry about that. That's your job as students, to follow along in the recipe, to make sure I don't forget anything, right? That's what I tell all my regular students. That's their job. Follow along the recipe and make sure I don't forget anything. All right, let's throw the cabbage in. All right, let's give it a few minutes. Somebody asked, can you if they are complex carbs. Aren't most vegetables high in carbs? Yes, so somebody already answered that for me. Yeah, so there's a huge difference between complex carbs and simple carbs. So millet, vegetables, these are complex carbohydrates. Everybody had ancient ancestors that walked the planet, and all of them ate complex carbohydrates. This is the main food that the human, and we're all human, should be eating on a regular basis. And it's what's missing in the average American diet, okay? The average American diet is high in refined processed carbs. These are complex carbs, whole grains, okay? Big difference. Yeah, so there's too much emphasis on carbs versus high protein diet. High nutrients should be the focus. Excellent point. Can you substitute red cabbage? Yes, you can put red cabbage in here. It's beautiful. Yeah, so there are 3 main nutrients that the human body has to have. And right now we're focused on mostly protein, which is so backwards. But anyways, you need 3 main nutrients in order to be healthy, live a pain-free existence, have lots of energy, okay? So the first one is carbohydrates. The body has to have carbohydrates in the form of complex carbohydrates. Again, they give you a slow, steady supply of glucose. High in fiber, they give your body long, sustainable energy, okay? Now, your brain is like a big glucose monster. It wants glucose all the time. Your brain's like, I want glucose, I want glucose. So again, if you eat whole grains, complex carbohydrates on a regular basis, you are getting a slow, steady feed of glucose, feeding your body, feeding your brain. And then your brain is like, I'm happy. I'm having happy thoughts. I'm in a good place. My brain is functioning really nice because I'm constantly being fed on a slow, steady basis. Now, the average American diet that is full of simple carbohydrates that releases glucose very quickly into your system. Think of your brain. Getting glucose, getting glucose, getting glucose, getting glucose, getting glucose. This is what's happening to your brain with these refined, processed, simple carbs. Okay, this is chaotic energy. This is what's happening in your brain because your brain wants the glucose. So again, complex carbohydrates does the exact opposite, slow and steady calm. Now, the second nutrient that the body needs is protein. You have to have protein, okay? Because you need protein for strong muscles. The biggest muscle in your body is your heart, okay? But being vegan or vegetarian, where do you get your protein? I have been asked that question so many times. Here's my answer. Every food that comes out of Mother Earth has protein in it. So everything that I eat that comes out of Mother Earth has protein in it. The millet, it is a complex carbohydrate. It has protein in it. In fact, protein has a really high, or excuse me, millet has a high protein profile. So yes, it's a complex carbohydrate, but there's protein in there. Parsnips, they are a vegetable. They are classified as a complex carbohydrate. There's protein in there. There's protein in the carrots. There's protein in the turnip. There's protein in the cabbage. There's protein in the onions. Literally, food that comes from Mother Earth, all of it has protein in it, which means everything that I eat has protein in it. Now, fruit has very small amounts of protein in it, but it does have some, but very, very small amounts. So everything that comes out of Mother Earth has protein. And the third vital nutrient that the body needs is fat. You have to have fat. Fat, here living in Michigan, we eat more fat in the wintertime because we need heat. Fat puts warmth into your body. Fat helps you digest certain vitamins and minerals that's in your food. You have to have that fat. So you have to have fat. Hopefully it's good quality unsaturated fat from nuts and seeds and tahini and olive oil. Those are your healthiest fats. So you have to have carbohydrates, protein, and fat. You got 3 of them. 2 of them will give you energy. 1 will not give you energy. So your next question is, what 2 of those 3 will give you energy? Okay. Well, I set up for what we have to do next. See if we got any answers. Okay, what 2 of the 3 nutrients give you energy? We have carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. We have protein and we have fat. 2 of them will give you energy. The third one will not give you energy. Everybody seems to be pretty smart because so far we've got the answer correct. Carbohydrates and fat. So I know that you've heard protein gives you energy, but protein will never give you energy. Carbohydrates and fat give you energy. The only way protein will give you energy is if you go on a no carbohydrate diet that's high in protein. Your body starts to starve itself because it doesn't have any carbohydrates, and your body starts to eat its muscles and its tissues to create energy. That's the only way you're going to get energy from protein. And we don't want that to happen. We want energy from complex carbohydrates, right? So you need carbohydrates, protein, and fat. If you come across any type of diet that tells you to cut one of those 3 out, turn around and walk away because you have to have all 3. Carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Have to have all 3. Okay, so let's go over here to the stove. We are ready to put the stew and the millet together. So here's the last thing we're going to add. We got half a cup of water. We have 2 tablespoons of arrowroot. Arrowroot is a white powder. It's a thickening agent. So this is what's going to take the beautiful hot broth that's in the stew, and it's going to thicken it for us. Now, I just turned off the heat on the stew because it's been boiling pretty good there. And we have 1 teaspoon of sea salt because we have to have some good quality sea salt in there. Mix it up with a fork and a measuring cup. Let's take the lid off of this. You can see what it looks like. So we have all the vegetables are, look at that, the fork goes into them. They're nice and tender, nice and soft, right? We take the beautiful cooked millet and we put the millet into the stew like so. And then we take dissolved arrowroot and sea salt and we pour that over the top. Now this is still very, very hot. So the heat from that hot sauce in there, the vegetable juices, it's mixing with the arrowroot and it's activating the thickening agent of the arrowroot. And so the stew is getting thick and the juices are starting to stick to the vegetables. Arrowroot is very good for your intestinal tract. It's fantastic for your digestion. That's what arrowroot is known for. So as I'm stirring this, it's just all coming together and it's becoming thick. So when you serve your stew, this is what it looks like. Oh, I got the camera too low. Hold on a sec. I'll put it in a bowl and show you what it looks like. So when you taste this, you have the beautiful sweetness. Sweetness comes through. The carrots are sweet. The sauteed onions are sweet. The parsnips are sweet. And then, of course, the sauce is like a combination of sweet and salty. You've got the brown rice syrup. You've got the tamari. You've got the creamy, beautiful texture of the millet. And then when you eat this, it's warming. This is a fantastic winter dish too, because all of those vegetables are going to help warm your body. The millet's going to help warm your body. All these things, it's a beautiful wintertime warming dish. Okay, yeah, why would millet be preferred over quinoa? I think millet is a winter grain and quinoa a summer. Yeah, so excellent, excellent point. Quinoa is a summer grain. It's the signature whole grain of summertime. So can you make this with quinoa? Yeah, you could make this with quinoa. You could, but that's why millet is more appropriate for when it's cold. Could you use farro? Yes, you could use any whole grain with this recipe. Farro, brown rice, quinoa, any one of the grains will work. Okay, I chose millet because it's a warming grain, and so yeah, so any one of the whole grains will work with this. So I wanted to let you know about many different ways that you can learn more about healthy whole foods and the recipes that I have. Looks delicious. Thank you. I teach cooking classes all the time. Every week I have cooking classes. On my website, macroval.com, is a list of all the cooking classes. So you can go there and you can see all the cooking classes. Put that there so you can see my website. Next Wednesday, I'm cooking how to make a vegetable stew with different vegetables. It's got sweet potato in it. And the stew has tofu in it also, if you want to learn about tofu. If you want a cooking class on Monday, February 7th, I am doing a macro Monday. So one Monday a month for the year of 2022, I'm going to do a standard traditional macrobiotic recipe. I'm teaching how to make aduki beans and squash, and I'm going to teach you 3 different versions of it. Wonderful program, Val. Got book club now. Thank you, and can't wait to try the recipe. Okay, thank you. And I'm working on February's schedule. I'm going to have February be fun February. So I'm working on little snack foods, finger foods. And then I'm also working on monkey bread. I'm going to teach how to make bread from scratch. And then we're going to turn it into that beautiful, delicious monkey bread. You break off pieces and it's cinnamon and everything. These are some of the upcoming things. I also have an incredible webinar that I'm doing on a Saturday. This is Saturday, February 26th. I am working with 2 other chefs. So there will be 3 chefs teaching recipes. It's from 10 a.m. to 2:30. And we're going to take breaks. So it's a long webinar. And you're going to get 6 recipes from 3 different chefs featuring foods for the wintertime. You know how we talked about the stew is a wintertime dish? Well, in this webinar, we're going to feature kasha, which is the whole grain for wintertime. We're going to feature chili, which is fantastic for winter, and sea vegetables. Sea vegetables are emphasized in the wintertime. So that is Saturday, February 26th. That's a big webinar I'm doing. I'm excited about that. All this information is on my website, macroval.com. Now, if you're on Facebook, I'm Macroval Food. And every Wednesday, I do a live at 8 o'clock. I come on Facebook for a half hour and I do a live presentation. The last one I did, I taught you how to cook kasha. the whole grain kasha. Are you on Instagram and Clubhouse? No, I am on Facebook and I am on LinkedIn. Those are the two platforms I'm on, Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm also on YouTube. If you want more cooking videos, go to my YouTube channel. And I also have created a subscription video cooking service called Whole and Healthy Cooking. It's a Patreon group. So there is a monthly fee for this, but there's over 40 cooking videos already uploaded. And every week I upload new videos. So if you like cooking videos, go to my YouTube channel and then also go to my Patreon page. There's free videos on the Patreon page too. So I have so many different ways that you can learn more recipes, learn more about the health benefits of the food, right? On top of that, I have the 5 cookbooks, and on my website is a recipe of the month. It's a cauliflower garlic mochi soup, and it's on the website right now. There's just so many ways that you can learn more from me about healthy cooking and things like that. And the South Lyon the South Lyon Library, I think this is my 3rd time teaching a class. I think I did a virtual last year and then an in-person the year before. So definitely give them feedback, what you thought of the class, what you thought of the recipe, and maybe some ideas for future cooking classes that I could teach through the library. Like, what are you interested in learning how to cook, right? So that's always interesting to find out what is the interest of all the people that attended the class, basically. So yeah, I greatly appreciate the South Lyon Library hosting me for this class. And I hope you get a chance to make this recipe because it's simple. It's not really complicated. It's very flavorful. And of course, all the health benefits are tremendous, definitely. If there's any more questions, feel free. You can ask questions. We're just about ready to wrap up here. Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody who attended.